Live. It seems to be working. Awesome. All right, it
Right
is
on.
that time, the time of the month or time of the week, I guess, that we do Geek Speak, and we're on here. We are talking about today the final countdown for Google Analytics 4. Anything you need to know about the changeover, what to expect, what uh, weird things because we've been doing the migrations, and so there's some things that have come up that we wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of as you guys are making the final migration because July 1st is upon us. And
That is right. So who are we, Phelan?
I am Phelan Lewis. I work at Seymour Digital Media. We're focused on search engine marketing.
And I am Rena Little from Little Works Indie Media, and I run a agency in Vancouver. Okay,
Awesome.
Phelan. So I've got a couple of questions right off the bat,
Mm-hmm.
if you hear the grunting, it's my dog. It's not my stomach. um, okay, so when you talk about migrating Universal over to G4, which is what the Google, emails have been saying, hurry up and migrate. But what actually are we migrating? Because it's my understanding that the data doesn't match up, and that's the whole point, and that's the reason why they're coming up with a new version. And so, therefore, the data does not actually migrate into G4. Is that correct? Or what do they mean when they say migrate?
There's a couple of like kind of misnomers or things that you and I, if we were doing it, would think they meant one thing when they actually mean slightly different. Um, and then
Yeah.
and so when they're saying that you're migrating, what you're bringing over, a lot of it is if you've set up a lot of goals, if you've set
Right.
up goals in Universal Analytics now become conversions over in GA4,
Yeah.
and then you want to, if you have really like complicated ones or you've done a lot of work setting those up, you can bring those over. Audiences, those get brought over as well. Also, your
Right.
connections to Google Ads accounts, so you're going to want to
Yes.
have those get moved over. And so it's
Sorry.
definitely, oh no, it's all good. I'm sure people are
This
loving
dog
it.
cannot be on a different chair than I am. So
Yeah, that's at least she's small enough that she can fit on a chair with you.
this is true. This is
Uh,
true.
yeah,
Okay, so it's not the data actually; it's the setup that we're migrating over,
yeah,
and the reason why that's super important is because if you're interested in tracking the things that you're tracking, then you're going to want to be interested in tracking them in G4 also, right?
yeah. And if you spend a lot of work setting up all these goals previously in these like complex audiences, like maybe you have like specific ones, then you don't want to just lose those. And so what they did is they built a tool that'll help you migrate it over. Again, like you said, the data itself just they operate differently, so it's not the because in GA4 everything's an event, right? Page loads, that's an
Yeah,
event. Someone clicks on something,
yeah,
that's an event, and so it's all these event based kinds, and so it's different than Universal Analytics, which actually just kind of opened. Like it's just a bit of code that was just like, okay, we're running, and then it collects all the information and then sends it. So
yeah. Okay, so number one, if there's no tracking set up in your Google Universal, which hopefully there is, but on the chance that there isn't, um, is there anything that needs to be done for those people? Let's just get that out of the way.
So you're gonna want to have you're definitely gonna want to have the Google Analytics for just the tag running on the site. The
Yes.
recommended way to do it is through Tag Manager. They were both kind of purpose built for each other, or GA4 was
Right.
purpose built to work with Tag Manager, and because it also has all these other fun functions of doing event tracking, it's super simple using Tag Manager compared to like you writing code of like when your
Right.
click happens. It's just infinitely easier and smoother and more consistent to do it with Tag Manager. And
Right.
so you'll definitely want to have that set up on a website is have a Tag Manager,
That's ideal. Yes.
and then
So
have the first
that's
tag.
ideal. That's ideal. So the first thing, yeah. So the first, sorry, what I'm trying to say is that if you just do the first part of G4 setup, where it says set up your G4, and you walk
Yeah,
through it, and it takes 5 minutes, that one is fine for those people that don't have anything set up in their analytics anyway, so they don't have to fret. And ideally, and especially if you're doing any marketing, you definitely want to have your tag manager and your goals and conversions, which are now events and conversions, set up. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correct?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So if you've got no universal analytics, you haven't really been doing anything with it, then you can just kind of set up and still be collecting information, and it's like you said, especially if you're doing ads, even if you're doing like paid social, it's still worth it to have the Google Analytics, because the Google Analytics
Yeah.
tag is more accurate than the Facebook Pixel in a lot of ways, because they've had so many issues with it getting blocked that
Yeah.
it's definitely one where you want to have Google Analytics. And I've heard it from Google Ads professionals that they use the Google Analytics to do their tracking for, doing the reporting for their client, because it's just does
Yes.
such a good job at knowing that, because you can put in the UTM parameters and then the Google Analytics just picks that up and then it can just do the reporting for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, and also you never really want to trust a third. I mean, Facebook hasn't really proven itself to be super trustworthy, so you might not want to like. I would always go for the analytics that are third party or off, something that's actually running from your site rather than what Facebook is necessarily saying. They
Yeah,
also have glitches, and sometimes
frequently.
that data is not correct, and sometimes you even get those nifty notifications that says we've made a mistake and we charged you too much and we're going to give you a refund, which I just received the other day. So I know that the
Yeah.
tracking that I looked at that time was incorrect
Yeah,
from
exactly.
Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like you said, it's one where if I had to pick between the two, I'm definitely picking Google Analytics 4 as doing
Yeah,
just header tracking across the board.
yeah,
And yeah, I've definitely found some sizable inconsistencies in them that made me a little nervous about, trusting them with
yeah,
that. So
yeah,
that's just, it's going to happen. It's par for the course. So
yeah,
um, and yeah, so you definitely want to be doing, event based tracking. You want to be setting that up. I'm going to be publishing a video of how to be setting those up and how to test it as well. That's going to be published in the
great.
next day or so. So it's fairly, you don't need a web developer. Once the tag manager's on the website, it's all done in kind of a browser based, and you just, the tricky part is just knowing how to set it up. But once you get going, honestly, it is infinitely easier than anything they've had before for doing event tracking. It's doing it through Tag
Oh,
Manager.
terrific. That's terrific. Okay. So the first thing that we need to get around is the new language, I think. So goals is now called conversions,
Yep.
and conversions are special events. So you
Yep.
can track way more than just the conversions. And what you usually do is you track a lot more, and then you actually put a priority on a certain number of those events, and we call them conversions. And you can name those conversions quite specifically. Is that right? Is that right,
Yeah.
Phelan? Yeah.
It's super mutable. Like, meaning like you have a lot of flexibility in how you want to name those ones. They do request on how you write those names. They like snake case, which is like no capitalizations and all the words are connected through an underscore. And that's to
Right.
help with data analysis, because it's how Python uses
Right.
all of its names, and so it's a byproduct of doing machine learning, is to make it super standardized for them.
Great. So this brings me to another little sideline here, and that is sometimes people randomly, if they've gotten a grant, say for Get Online or Grow Online, and they get their stuff updated by a developer, and then they get the goal conversions organized on their analytics. But what happens sometimes in the reporting, like especially I'm using Databox at the moment, and sometimes on my Raven reports, it'll show how many goals, but it won't act, and it will even tell me the specific goals, but you really need to know what those goals actually mean. So, from your marketer, ask if you're looking on a report and the goal says one thing, just ask what that actually means. Equals, because you can actually assign, for example, subscribe is an automatic goal that exists. In certain cases, and you can actually use that to mean something else. So it's really good to know exactly how your goal setup is and what all of the names of those goals actually are tracking, because it might not be as obvious as it seems.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that. That sometimes you might have a goal, but like maybe it's, while important, it's not as important as like, I want to know when people want my get a free quote form. If they fill that out right, that's like my highest concern out there, and I want to know who's filling that
Yeah.
out. You might have other ones that are important but not as important. Unfortunately, they don't give you a way to like prioritize conversions. It's so they're all kind of getting in a big bundle. So it is, like you said, it's up to you to kind of know when you say I got 20 conversions this month, what does that actually? How does that break down?
Yes. So that's kind of a two-part scenario where you're deciding what your conversions are. And that can actually change for a business. So you might want to change your conversions every now and again, change them out. If you don't have a online store at the moment, then obviously online store shopping is not going to be your conversion. But if you add that, then you're going to want to update your goals, your conversions on your analytics. But then also you want to make sure that the name of that conversion actually has a specific meaning. So sometimes, as I was saying earlier, people can just automatically choose one of the preset conversion names and assign it to a task that's different. A
Yeah,
task,
I mean,
you know what I?
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, you can definitely change those ones, like so you can have a name, but like it triggers off of something else, some other event that occurs.
yeah,
So you can definitely do
yeah,
that. Definitely make notes if you are changing that though, because uh,
yeah,
I like to keep them. I personally just like because I might trip myself up. So just watch out if you're changing names of the events, but the name's the same, but the trigger's different. That might also be. But I also agree with you that it's important for you to regularly audit. Like, hey, I get tons of phone calls, but like none of them, they're all a waste of time. Like they're all tire kickers, and I don't really want those. So maybe you want to prioritize, the people that filled out the contact form. Those guys, four 4 out of 5 of them converted into an actual job. So like maybe so you want to also look at from the leads that you're getting, who's actually been quality, where's that quality been coming from as well.
yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, so an audit on those things are regularly is pretty, or periodically is pretty good, and
Mm-hmm.
definitely know what your conversions are specifically, because I know I haven't really changed too much in the analytics, but with Facebook ads, they just had a whole bunch that were preset, and we would assign them to whatever things we wanted to track. So we kept really good track of what those things meant. But sometimes I look at other people's work and I take over someone else's account and I'm like, okay, I need the list of what your conversions actually are. And they won't know. And I'm like, how can you know? That's a really super important piece of information
Yeah.
to have at hand and to be really clear on. So in my case, I put those goals and what they mean on the top of every single report that ever goes out to my clients so that they can figure it out too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have another question about that. Um, all right. So, yes. So now that we know that conversions are the old goals, where do we
Yep.
find the conversion path? And is that what it's called now? Because it used to be called, oh, yes. No, I sort of gave that away. Assisted conversions. Where's
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah, so there used to be a whole section under conversions called multi-channel funnels, and it had all the like once you set up goals, it actually tracks like how this user like where do they find me, how many times did it take before they converted, what was the time that it took for them to convert. All the stuff was being tracked once you set up goals. For conversions, you go in. It's actually easier to find now, which is nice. So
Okay, great.
there's going to be 4 options on the left-hand vertical menu. So it's home, reports, uh, explore, so you get to make your own reports, and then the last one is advertisement, and under advertisement you have conversion path. And so they make it pretty easy. It once you know that's where you have to go look. The thing that they're playing a little fast and loose with is that we talked about last week with the in the monthly roundup, is that they're changing attribution models, and so they're taking some away. So sometimes you would just want to know, I want to know like each step in the journey. And now
All
they're kind of
right.
like, oh, actually, you want to look at, and so you can use different attribution models to see like if I did it with data driven, which one would actually have gotten me the which channel would have been the one that did it the most, but it's kind of opaque on like, how are you making these decisions? Like, what was the thing that made it like, oh, this got 75% of this conversion? They don't tell you.
Oh, right. Oh, that's unfortunate because it would be really handy to know that information.
Yeah, like what's the criteria?
But
And they're like,
what's the tipping point for somebody to make a decision to buy? Like that's what we're talking about here. What is the tipping point?
yeah,
What was the most compelling argument? What was the ad that gave us the thing that
yeah,
happened?
yeah,
That would
exactly.
be
So it's
really good. So they're taking that away, hey?
yeah, because like to me, it's like, and I don't think we're asking for too much. It's just like, okay, you've clearly weighted this somehow. What is the thing that you made you weight it this way? And then I could either go, well, that's stupid, or that's really good. I'm really smart. Like, I'm glad you pointed that out, because then
Yeah,
they would make, because that's the part that's driving me nuts about them switching over to like this data driven. It's that they don't tell you what the data is that makes it weigh these things this way. And so if you'd
right.
said, oh, this one they actually spent the most time on page and they clicked around the most, I was like, okay, that makes sense. That's actually super helpful. That's why you
Yeah.
thought that.
Oh yeah, because actually that's true because your organic analysis of your pages might not bring that information up. It could be something completely different that you're unaware of.
Yeah. And I
Interesting.
mean,
Okay, well, so
well, I
sorry,
was
go
just going to
ahead.
say that, when they're doing this stuff, because they're collecting all this data and they're supposed to be running machine learning stuff, if they outputted, hey, we noticed that people that are coming to that land on this page from organic actually do convert the most in your middle of their funnel. That would be a cool thing that they'd run all this analysis and then spat out as like a bit of data that you
Yeah,
didn't know to think about. And so
yeah,
there's things like that that are kind of frustrating in that it could be so much better if they just had that extra little bit where they just, I don't know, I'm not needing like a detailed report. I just want
yeah,
that we noticed this, and then that's why we
yes,
said this.
yeah, like almost like a hot jar view of people down your page. Like I always liked that. Do
Yeah.
you know if the privacy rules are affecting Hotjar at all? Because I haven't looked at that app in a long time.
So it's, yeah, I mean, my understanding is as long as they followed a couple of rules, they wouldn't be in violation of any of it.
Okay.
Um, so there's like anonymize all data. Um, there's a couple of things that they have to do. Um, uh, of course, like there's a lot of like there's only so much you could do to anonymize data,
Yeah.
right? Because if I know like, oh, this form got filled out at this time, and I just go back to my Hotjar and I pull out, like I could pull out
Yeah.
information about that
Yeah.
person. Um,
But you're gonna know about that person if they're filling out a form anyways, because they want you to know about them.
yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
they are giving you their name and number.
yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah. So I guess it's
hopefully,
yeah, and so I think that um, I was gonna say, just kind of going off of that, is that a lot of your reporting, especially if you're using Data Studio, is going to
oh
break.
yes. Yes,
So
we are going to need to, if you haven't already, organized your reports differently to accommodate and connect with the G4 rather than the Universal Analytics. They will break in July 1st, right? I guess you won't be
yeah,
able to pull data anymore, which is probably not terrible. You just need to go in and adjust your settings and run it again, and that's fine.
yeah, I found so far that like 90% of the report will just kind of turn over because there's equivalents. There's going to be a
Yeah.
few that you might need to
Oh, is that
adjust.
right? Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know
because they're
there was
not.
going to be. Okay, maybe what I should do is try that actually because I do have some old reports that are paused that are still connected to the old Universal Analytics. I'd love to see what that looks like in comparison to a G4 report. Oops.
Yeah. So there, yeah, and another cool thing, that one good thing about the GA4 is that they're not done adding to it. So there's actually been stuff that's been added, like each time I've kind of gone into Data Studio, especially, that they actually have been adding new stuff to it. Like originally they didn't have average time on page wasn't in the new GA4, and now it just showed up yesterday when I looked. So like
Great.
super
Yes, I'm
useful.
very excited to see how they add to it. Like, I'm hoping that they're really going to build this one out nicely. Um,
Annotations. I would love if they kept up the annotations.
in case
Uh,
Google's listening. something.
Yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah.
But it's definitely one where I've been like, there's some that are just kind of frustrating that,
Mhm.
like why, like the decision making process seems a little weird that it's like, oh, we're not going to do this thing. And I'm like, but you did it over on the old one. Why don't you do it over here?
All right.
Uh,
So I've got a couple more questions, and I'm
yeah.
just a bit worried about the time. So
Oh, yeah, for
the
sure.
one thing I wanted to say is, if you're only doing organic, what is the top thing you should be doing? Like what should you be setting up if you're only doing organic and you're not running any ads? Because there are a lot. I think there are a lot of people who are DIYing their own marketing and they don't do ads as a
Yeah.
rule.
Yeah. And totally. And with the big one, like we kind of said at the top, make sure you have the tag manager set up with the GA4. It's just, even if you're just passively collecting data through tag manager, that's a really good way to do it. You should have some basic event tracking, because even if you're just collecting leads, tracking who fills out a form, tracking who clicks the tell
That's a
link,
call.
who's
Yeah,
and the mail to. So calling you, trying to email you, or filling out the form. Those are kind of the three basics that you want to
great.
be tracking.
Oh, well, that's good. I wasn't even sure that you could um, organize events with, or oh yes, of course I know that. Okay, I'm just getting a little confused. I'm thinking at the
Ah,
same time.
no worries.
Sorry. Okay, so actually, we went through the next big chunk on my list. This dog is annoying me. It needs to go out and exactly right now. It cannot wait. Um,
Of
okay,
course.
so we talked about Data Studio, which is the reporting,
Yeah.
and then so to okay, yeah. So I guess actually those all of those things that are on the rest of our list covered in the before time.
Yeah.
So are there any other last sort of hints that you want to give people?
Yes. So one other one. This is going to be a little more complicated, and I have a blog post that's written by someone I follow for all this kind of stuff. It's about internal filtering. So I know that especially
Oh,
for
yes, that's
marketers,
right.
that are working with clients, and obviously they're going to the website testing things out. You want to make sure that you're not polluting the traffic. It used to be simpler to set it up in Universal Analytics, but now what you have to do, there are some extra steps that you'll need to follow, and it's not the most intuitive. I will say, it's not impossible. It's just you do need to watch a video to do it the first time, because it's in a weird spot. It's like pretty deep in how the data stream is set up, and it's so I have got a blog post, and it's super easy to follow along with. And then once you've done it once, it's pretty straightforward to do it again. It's just
So do,
you
do
you
you
need some
still
practice.
just need the IP address for the is that all you need?
Yeah, so what you do is you're going to put a filter over the data stream. So remember how all these events are coming in? That's the stream of events. And so what you're doing is you're putting a filter that says anytime an event has this IP address, so it's coming from this, that it just gets filtered as test data.
Okay. And then my next question about that is, I understand that the kind of IP that you're going to be adding is changing. Someone had mentioned that to me the other day, so you might need to change the number that you put in.
Yeah, I had a pretty painful experience, because there's like two different numbers. I'm not going to go into what they are, but like the 2001 number that you would usually put in, I had a tough time with that one. It just didn't want to
Yeah,
activate
yeah.
it, so I had to put in. Yeah, there's another IP address that you can get as well, and it's just and so you'll have to put that one in,
So we
and
should
it's
probably put that information, how to get that for yourself, and what it's called into the
yes.
comments. I think
Yes.
that's pretty
I think
important.
it's IPv4 versus
Yeah,
IPv6. The IPv6 is the
yeah,
2001, and then the one
yeah.
that starts, I think it's like 117 for us, is because it's based on your location.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, so we'll definitely put that into the comments so that you can filter out your own
yeah.
test because especially if you should be testing your stuff regularly. That's the other thing I want to mention while we're on the
Yeah.
subject. The number of times I've had people get back to me and say, a new client will say, well, I haven't gotten any leads in the last 6 months, and I used to get 3 or 4 a week, and nothing's happened. And then I take over the website and we do our testing, and lo and behold, their form broke like 6 months ago, and it's taken them that long to complain. And they just think that it's something happening with Google, and they think their SEO is wrong, and everything's gone just downhill. So not what I was going to say, but downhill is what we mean. And really, it's their form. It's their contact us form. It's their, sign up for a discovery call form. They don't work. If they don't work, you're not going to get anything. It has nothing to do with your SEO or your marketing.
Yeah, I mean, and definitely. And also when you take over any websites to check it, because we've had that where we checked it and they're like, oh, that wasn't working at all. And then it's one of those like, oh, you should have been testing it. And it's like, well, then they blame you for pointing out that there was a mistake. And it's like, well, it wasn't like I was breaking this thing.
Yeah, I think one of the best things for my for our maintenance packages that we offer, that's probably one of the things that I've the add-ons, because we want to make sure that things work right. We always have somebody go on monthly and test all the forms for our clients, and that's really helped to keep things flowing properly and well. And when you're doing DIY hosting, this is one of the actions that you need to do, because when you hit your update buttons, usually they update fairly reasonably and there's no problem, but you just don't know when something like that is breaking. You can tell when something visually is breaking. You can't always tell when something is functionally breaking, which means you have to test the function. So if you haven't been doing it, then and you're on a WordPress site in particular, then that's definitely something to add to your end of month task list or middle of month task list, or whatever it is that you want to
put. And another trick with that as well that we do is we set it up where it connects to either Google Sheet or a database. And so even if the client isn't receiving them, at least if they're stored somewhere, that later on we can go, hey, here you go. And then they, at least it's stored somewhere. And then it's no matter what, even if it breaks on the sending the email to the client, at least that you have a backup. And so that they can go and reach out to them. And
the WordPress forms do not do that. The cheap, free WordPress forms do not allow for that. So that is one area that you might want to consider a premium plugin is for your forms, because exactly that. There will be a spot on the server where the website is, where you can log in and just double check to make sure that you're getting all of your emails. If you notice that you stop receiving emails from your forms, then you can always go up there and check, and you still have the information that you can, go back and get back to that person who's expecting you, who wants to do business with you, whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
So that's one of the places that I always recommend a premium plugin.
Yeah, though I do have a free version that I jerry-rigged with Contact Form 7.
Yeah, but you're smarter than me.
Well, this one was patience, and I like Contact Form 7 because there's a lot of free add-ons and people build them. Obviously there's pro versions of all of these that automate a lot of it, but once you so I would definitely recommend, you're doing it yourself, just pay for the software, because it'll save you so much headache in the long run. 9 times out of 10, the cost of losing a lead is just outweighed by that monthly cost. And it's usually annual costs too that are pretty one year subscription, so it's not even a monthly. So it's definitely worth it to invest in that. And so we are coming up on time, and so I just wanted to do quick recap for people that you definitely want to have this Google Analytics 4 set up on your website using Tag Manager. You'll want to connect your new reporting to, if you're using Data Studio or any sort of reporting that was using the the Universal Analytics, you want to make sure that you're connected to your Google Analytics 4. And then make sure that all your goals and your events tracking, if you are doing that, especially if you're doing ads.
Conversions.
Yeah, conversions. Yes. Sorry.
I know it's hard to get. I don't know why they would have had to change the name, but it's fine. We can do it.
Engineers. It's
Um,
just software engineers.
exactly. So if you're watching this from elsewhere, we are actually in the Facebook private group, Cyberpunk Geek Marketing Mixer. So you can join us there if you like. If not, you can always just come back to wherever you are. We stream in a lot of places, actually. And
Yep.
next week's version is, oh no, I thought I was being really smart by going right back to the Cyberpunk banner, but the next one's not up yet, and it's
Oh,
next month. So I actually am now not going to be able to do that. Do you know what's next week?
I thought it
Monticello?
was going to be the fun and weird uses for Chat GPT.
Chat GPT. Yes, of course. So it'll be
Yeah.
Pip and me on that one, and come and join us next week at 11 a.m. for weird ways of working with Chat GPT for your marketing in particular. All right. Thanks for joining us, everyone.
Okay. Bye for now.